Welcome to another season of Pro to Pro, where we sit down with entrepreneurs and successful business people and talk about their journeys to their success in their career. We go behind the scenes and have candid conversations with them and discuss health, relationships, fitness, and of course, business decisions, good and bad. If you're looking for inspiration, valuable business insights, and a dose of motivation, you're in the right place. Join me and my guests as we share our experiences, ideas, and stories that can help you on your own journey of growth and success. Welcome, and remember, keep it pro to pro. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Pro to Pro. I'm here with TJ Cox, and TJ is sitting near something that's dear to his heart, which we're going to talk about on this podcast. Welcome to the program, TJ.
Thank you very much for having me.
I understand this is your first podcast, so we'll make it as painless as possible for you. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. I'm really excited to talk about your business ventures and your development and career, because not only are you married to a close friend and business associate of both my wife and I, Bree, who's helping me through this entire podcast world and social media world, but she's your partner as well through a lot of the things that you've done, which we'll talk about a little bit also. So let's get started a little bit. So just give a little bit of background. I mean, we're going to talk about the hospitality business that you're in and the restaurant field and things like that. But for purposes of just background information, share a little bit with us, you know, growing up and where you think you may have developed the entrepreneurial passion as you progressed through grade school, high school, and college and the like to get to where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've lived in Kentucky my entire life. Grew up in a small town, 75 miles from where I live now. So I have been in central Kentucky my whole life. I went to school, the same school system, it's kind of all very consistent. And a lot of the same friends that I went to kindergarten with, I graduated from high school with. And so a lot of the same faces there. And, Somerset's a pretty small town and, maybe 25,000 people. Lexington, where I live now, is about 350,000. And it's the biggest place I've ever been. When we were growing up, we would come to the big city of Lexington, and we would always go out to eat at, the steakhouses here, or, somewhere that, with Somerset, we had limited options. A big night on the town was going out to, say, the Sonic Drive-In, if you will. And so, coming to Lexington was a very big deal. That's where, UK basketball is kind of a big deal. I don't know if you've ever heard of the UK Wildcats,
Oh yeah.
Kind of a big deal around the nation, So it was a big deal to come up to Lexington, go out to eat, maybe spend an evening. And, so I was always familiar with Lexington. Didn't really know I would end up in Lexington long term when I was young, but growing up, hospitality was something that my family really focused on. Taking care of each other, sitting down around the dinner table was something, regardless of how diffuse everyone was, we would always find a way to make it to the dinner table and sit around and talk about our days and come together and discuss what had happened and how we could help each other out and be there for each other. And then you go about your evening. And I can always remember hanging out in the kitchen more often than most any other place in the house, in the kitchen, probably more than even in my bedroom when I was small, either watching my grandfather cook beans on the stove or cornbread or biscuits. He was a Southern guy from Alabama, so he was, big into making cornbread and biscuits and beans and that sort of thing. So I can remember those smells right now. They're quite indelible, in fact. The smell of the beans, on a cast iron stove with wood fire, and those smells together, I can go there right now. It's absolutely incredible. And so I maybe didn't know it, but some of those first seeds of my hospitality venture were being planted at that time. And, actually my cousin and I used to do, when we were very young, we would kind of pretend to be a cooking show, right? We were Regis and Kathy Lee, right? And we would make things in the kitchen and, talk about it and discuss what we were making. And we used to have so much fun with that. And lo and behold, both of us really still love to cook. And I've, ventured into hospitality. So I moved to Lexington when I was probably 19 to go to college, and I needed a job, I had to pay rent and pay bills. I needed some cash, and the restaurant industry welcomed me with open arms. And so I was a busboy, and I had no idea what I was doing. I'm pretty sure I was not a very good busboy. Um, but I did like being in the restaurants. I liked the sounds, the smells, the interactions, all the different people. It was absolutely incredible, and it just kind of started to blossom from there. And that was 25 years ago now.
Let's pick up a little bit before you took off to go to Lexington.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit, like, where are you in the hierarchy of your family as a sibling?
I'm an only child.
Okay,
It was just me and my mother.
Growing up, were you involved in sports, or were you an academic guy? Were you artistic? What was it that you enjoyed growing up, other than watching your granddaddy and things like that?
Yeah, sure. So music was a huge part of my life. I was a trumpet player in high school band, and actually I started in sixth grade. And I wasn't naturally talented, but I loved it, and I loved music. I would listen to any type of music. I liked anything from classical to country to, at the time that was kind of when grunge was starting to come online. So Nirvana and Soundgarden and some of those guys. And I really, kind of leaned into that. I was like, wow, this is really interesting, very cool music. And so I started playing guitar a lot as well. But I found that I wasn't as naturally talented as some of the other people in band and with their instruments. And so I found that I had to work really hard. And the harder I worked, I was like, well, I can actually get better if I practice, several hours a day. Which in high school, to practice, a musical instrument several hours a day was, that was a bit difficult. There were a lot of distractions, a lot of other things I could have been doing, but I knew I wanted to be really good in music. And there were, competitions and things where you could go in all state, all region, all of that. And I was like, I want to win those competitions. I want to be the best. And I knew in order to be the best that I had to give it everything I had, and I had to practice and find good teachers and really just and own this thing. And lo and behold, my junior year I actually made all state. I was in the top 25 in the state of Kentucky. And then my senior year, I actually got a little bit higher. I was up in the top 10, and was just a fantastic and remarkable experience. And I actually ended up going to college on a music scholarship with the
There you
intention of
go.
being a high school band director. I thought music was going to be my career and my life, and it's still a big part of it, but it's not my job. And what I discovered in college was music was becoming my job. And I was having to work really hard to do this thing that other people, in college, the naturally talented were leaps and bounds beyond what I experienced in high school. And these guys were effortlessly, making sounds with their instruments that were just unbelievable, that I was working 10 to 12 hours a day in rehearsal and couldn't even come close. And so I realized, okay, my music IQ is not as high as I need it to be as successful as I want to be. So there's a disconnect here. And so I need to change directions here. And for, a 19-year-old kid to decide that, that was a big decision.
Oh, I bet
And
it was.
I didn't, yeah, it was, I didn't know which direction to go. I was a little bit lost, to be frank, and I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do. And there was a restaurant that opened its arms to me to some degree, and that's really where all that started. I made that transition from being a full-time music major into, I actually transferred to the University of Kentucky from a small university in Richmond, Kentucky. And I didn't know what I wanted my major to be. I was just a little bit lost academically, and restaurants were right there to pick me up and, start to show me a different path. That I was starting to learn different skill sets. I was starting to learn how to really interact with people, really how to develop interpersonal communication, and how to be at someone's service, but not in, indentured servitude. That was never the idea. But the idea is to create an experience for someone. And that's, you don't know that immediately when you start into hospitality, but that's the long-term goal, is to figure out how to be the most hospitable person, how to bring, this remarkable experience to someone that they just can't help but come back to. And so, I didn't know that early on. Of course, I was just trying to make some cash so I could pay my rent and, stay alive, stay afloat,
Well, it's
and, yeah.
interesting. I mean, I'm a music nut myself, and growing up, I drifted towards the guitar, and I still try to play guitar here and there. like you, it requires a lot of hard work, and I don't necessarily think I was gifted. I don't know how to read music for the most part, bar chords and stuff like that I could do, and I played pretty much off of sound and then watching people. But music and the study of music is a very, let's just say, solitary. It's something that you do alone. And you really have to take that time, like you said, to get good at it, especially if you don't have the gift that some of the people that you suggested had, that you were challenged with. Then you progress from there at a 19-year-old doing that, like all by yourself, to go, you basically immerse yourself into a very social environment. You get into this restaurant business. Were you a little shy in the beginning, or did you have any of like any bashfulness in your approach, or were you like always a gregarious type of guy?
I think, it was maybe a little bit of both. I enjoyed my time away from the tables. I found myself gravitating towards the bar very early on. Somerset, where I grew up, was a dry county, and so alcohol was something that was a bit taboo and not what you would see as openly consumed as what I was now experiencing in Lexington, and at this nice steakhouse with lots of wine being poured, martinis being shaken. And so I did enjoy my time away from the table. It was first off a bit exhausting to have to be so up front and speaking to so many new people all the time. And but as a busboy, I can exist in the fringes a little bit, right? I don't have to go and sell things to the table. I just have to drop some waters off and make sure that the table is maintained, there's no dirty dishes and that sort of thing, so I can really exist in the background to some degree. And what I found was that I wanted to go hang out at the bar and be around where the bartenders were shaking and doing these cool things, and mixing up these beautiful cocktails in these cool glasses that I'd never seen before. And I asked a lot of questions, and I was kind of sometimes shooed away as this little annoying kid over here asking all these questions. The bartenders were these, kind of grizzled folks that have been in the business for a while, if not a bit jaded. And so they would kind of shoo me away, and I liked how the bartenders were on stage because it reminded me of music. Musicians, you're on stage and you're performing, and the bartenders were on stage and performing. And the servers were just kind of touch and go. They could go to the table and do their thing and then walk away and go in the back and, cut up or, do whatever and kind of turn it off for a second. The bartenders had to be on constantly, and you couldn't escape from your guests. You're in front of them all the time. And I found that to be the most compelling. It looked like it was the hardest job there. And once again, I was like, okay, that's the hard one. I want that. That's where I need to be. So I need to position myself such that I can get to that point where I can do the hardest job here and be the best one. And so just that same approach that I had in music in high school, where I saw what was needed to be the best and where it could land me, and I absolutely needed and wanted that. And that's what's kind of compelled me and pushed me for as long as I can remember, is recognizing where the best are going, trying to learn how they get there, and then trying to perfect that journey on how to achieve that. And that's where I've made the most progress.
I think that your music background and the application that you shared with us regarding your study habits also were probably extremely, let's just say, formative for you to help you progress to the next level. And then, as you shared with us, the fact that you were drawn to the artistic side of the bartender. I mean, today's day, and we'll get into it, and we know that you have a lot of you've got some titles behind you too with regard to the alcohol industry as a sommelier and things like that. But it is a artistic. It's really become an artistic thing, developing drinks and alongside menus as part of one piece of the puzzle as part of the whole hospitality side of business itself. Can you kind of share with us where you kind of saw yourself as far as when you came to terms with the fact, I can't necessarily work for someone else. I need to be my own boss.
So I've worked for a lot of people in the restaurant industry, and I've seen a lot of operators and how they interact with their business, how they direct their management, how they build out their businesses. And I noticed a lot of a lot of variety there. I noticed some investors that were a little bit more hands off, that were, maybe not as much of a silent investor, but they were, definitely some bringing the cash into the game, and were always bringing in someone with a hospitality mind to be their partner. And I started recognizing balance. And, I try to always be a sponge. I try to always be watching. And, I was always a job to be done, and I need to take care of the guest, provide the utmost in hospitality, but there's always this other thing going on. And I was always a few steps removed from it. It seemed like there was someone behind the curtain always that was kind of pulling strings, doing things. And I didn't exactly understand what that was about, but I knew I wanted to learn more, because once again, with this hierarchy thing, it's like, well, there's this bartending thing. And then there's the next step is you could become a manager. And then what's beyond that, and that was always a bit of a mystery to me. No one in my family has ever, has really any kind of entrepreneurial spirit. Everyone's always been, working for someone, or, there's never really been any, at least to my knowledge, within a couple of generations, no one's really ever taken on business for themselves. And so I didn't even really understand how that worked. And, and this was even in my mid 20s. I understood that there was an owner, there was a management staff. And then from there, it was, we all kind of had an accountability structure to one another. But I didn't know what the owner actually did, because I never saw anyone truly hands-on as an owner operator. And probably the first person that I actually saw to do that is my current business partner. And I recognized that he was the owner. His name was the name of the restaurant. That was quite the responsibility. Like, you're going to the Jonathan's, like, that's his name. And not only is his name on the sign, but he's in the kitchen, he's cooking, he is up front, he's speaking to the guests, he is interacting with his business. And I thought, this is different. This is not the same thing that I've recognized. He showed me that you can grow from being, the chef or whatever it is. If you really truly desire this, that you can have your own business. And I started to build some confidence in, like, okay, I do have the ability to do this. I know how to operate a restaurant, but I also need to learn how to operate a business. And at first I didn't think, I thought I could just be this great hospitality guru, and, like, I can wait on tables, I can train management staffs, I can do all these things. But there's so much more to the business than, just the hospitality. Without the hospitality, you can't have the business. But I knew I needed to learn how to do the other steps, how to really make things grow, how to scale, there's so many components that I was just unfamiliar with. And I actually ended up going back to school. I have a degree in horticulture. Plant and soil science was what I went back to school ultimately for. And that didn't necessarily prepare me for business ownership.
Yeah, of course.
It prepared me for the backyard garden and being able to diagnose some plant, things and all that, but not to be a business owner. And, the goal was honestly to get out of the restaurant business and to go into vineyard management and viticulture. And I wanted to grow grapes and make wine. And I think maybe that's still my long-term goal. That's that passion thing that, I think may be in my future somewhere down the line. But, for now, it's on the back burner. So I stayed in the restaurant business, became a general manager, started learning some financial methods, started to learn what's a P&L, and how to analyze a P&L, and how do you put all this information together? How do you read the story and the numbers to optimize your business? And how do you use that story and that optimization to create a business, or to, train your current staff to get you to your desired outcomes, all the while maintaining focus on the fact that you're a hospitality industry. And you've got to hone in on that. You've got to be that part more than anything. And having the time to do that is kind of where I found myself. And I was very fortunate. I did spend some time with an operations company, kind of not as an intern, but I was a beverage director for kind of a casual restaurant group. And what I noticed was they had 47, 48 restaurants, and all of them did everything exactly the same every single time. And how to coordinate those efforts, and how to deal with accounting, how to deal with human resources, how to deal with all these things. It was quite the undertaking. And so once again, I'm just a sponge. I'm just watching what all these people are doing. And I learned a lot, and I still apply all those things to my current business model.
You're traversing through life, and you're figuring out that it's kind of taking a hold of you, in that this is the career that you want to be in. while you're working, and then you're in there full time. When was it that you got to a point where you had the confidence to say, okay, I'm done, doing all this for other people. I am now going to do it on my own. I'm going to make that step forward for myself.
I'd say probably about 9-10 years ago, when I was working for the major operations group that had multiple restaurants, hotels, all sorts of things. I was like, okay, I found myself one day sitting in a cubicle, which is not something I had ever done. I had always been on the floor. I'd always been in the restaurant. And one day I'm sitting in this cubicle with these two screens in front of me, and I'm putting together spreadsheets about, changing a well system over to another one that might save, a quarter point on the P&L. And I just started looking at it, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is not me. I don't feel right here. I have enough of a skill set. It's time to take off. It's time to do the next thing. And I was in my own way for the longest time. I didn't think that I had the capacity to do it. I didn't think that I was, I didn't have the capital to do it. I need all this money to open these restaurants or open a business or to do things. I need. And I didn't think I had. And the only thing I needed to have was the confidence to go do this. I needed to take some chances, take some risk, put it all on the line. And I had the skill sets. I had the know-how. I just had to, I had to find the right partner. I had to find someone that would build my confidence. And thank goodness I have two excellent partners. My wife, who is extraordinarily supportive and has always encouraged me to take advantage of what I'm thinking that I want to do and go do these things. And my business partner, who is really, really excellent at all the things that I'm not really good at. And I find that to be a trend among business partners, that it's a yin and yang, right? We all we are excelling in the things that the others aren't good at, with an understanding of what they do. So I'd already known my business partner at that time. We'd always sit around and talk about, if we were going to do a restaurant together, what would it look like? And I was like, we have analyzed this thing to the point that it's time to take action. And so I started my journey of understanding how to develop a business plan at that time. I Googled restaurant business plan, just that simple. And I started researching other places that, were similar to what we were looking at doing. And I found about a dozen or so business plans with, the appendix with the pro forma financials and how to build cash flow statements, how to build a break-even analysis, all of that. And I was like, well, this is just numbers, and numbers speak to me because of music. Music was always, it's a numbers thing, right? It's always a division of numbers, a division of wholes. And that was, that really resonated with me. So I don't have a background in accounting or anything like that, but music really, I found that it gave me that foundation to understand how the numbers for a business should work.
Amazing.
And so I just put all that together, and I wrote my first business plan in the summer of 2016. I read, a few online journals about, how to start a business and what you need to put together. And I was like, well, this doesn't seem terribly difficult. I know what a lot of these things are, but I was like, I know where I don't excel, and I can outsource those things to my business partner, who's already been a business owner. But I know what I can bring to his business that maybe he was lacking in the past, that would maybe help him find some success as well. And so we wrote a business plan. We went out and did some fundraising, and I was shocked. We were able to fully fundraise for our first business. The entire capital startup was fundraised using my business plan that I wrote with what I learned on Google.
I got to interrupt you for a second, because you've hit so many important points and areas that we discuss on this podcast and on our platform. Number one, let's talk about that wall you hit with regard to your life. And what I mean by that is, you had this epiphany. It just hit you, in that little cubicle. You said, enough is enough. I'm done. Basically. And then you said you needed to do something about it, which I think that happens a lot with people at different times of their lives. It could be in the beginning, it could be, towards the end, it could be in the middle. I mean, it doesn't, there's no time frame in one's life when that light bulb may come on and say, I need to do something on my own. But you also raise some other points that are so important that I think for every entrepreneur to take to heart, is that the value of a spouse or partner or significant other in providing that catalyst or support, or at least reinforcement of love and understanding to allow you to blossom and move forward in your dreams, is crucial. And I know, obviously I have a personal relationship with Bree, your wife. She's wonderful. But we talk about this on the podcast a lot, about that. Do you believe that, that relationship was some, I'll put you on the spot here. Bree's probably listening, or she will be listening, but do you believe in part that her belief in you was something that really helped you with those fears and anxiety that you had in moving forward with that risk?
Yes. And it's not because she wanted me to find success, and she wanted to celebrate in that success with me. But more than anything, she was going to be there for me if I failed as well. And it didn't matter. It was unconditional. Her support, her love, it was unconditional, still is unconditional, and will always be unconditional. And I truly believe that. And it's the same with me for her. And I could speak with her about anything. I could come to her in my most vulnerable moments. I could come to her when it's, just the most awesome day ever, and we found many successes. And hey, we've had 3 people wrote us checks for our business today, and I can't believe it. And I'm can't wait to come home and celebrate with you. But just knowing that she was going to be there either way was paramount to the entire experience for me. And it's been like that with Bree and I since we first met each other. Actually, I hired Bree at a restaurant. I was a general manager, and I hired her as a host. And that's how we met, was that I hired her and was her boss, and which, be what it may, that's how we met. But when Bree walked in to apply for this job, you get a lot of people that come in sometimes to apply for a host job. And it's kind of an entry level position, and it's, you can grow out of it quickly. You can stay in it for a long time, but it's kind of the first line of defense for a restaurant. And, we talked about presentation and how one presents themselves. And when Bree walked in, I saw a person with the type of character and the presentation that I had never experienced before. She presented herself in such a way that you thought she was applying for the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And this was for, an hourly position for part-time as a host. And I had never seen someone take something so seriously and be so dedicated immediately to something and just say, I'm ready to start this job right now, and I really want to do this. And lo and behold, within 2 months, she's coming in, she's redesigning the website, she's doing all these other things. And I was just not only enamored with this beautiful woman that had just come in, but enamored with her work ethic and her style and what she brought to her job, even when it wasn't called for. And I was inspired by that. And I was like, man, this girl's going to leapfrog me, and she's going to jump past me and my abilities that I've been working on for a decade plus. She's been here for 2 months, and she could already be a full-time manager. I mean, she was always going to do bigger and better things, but the fact that she had this job, I'm going to take it serious. I'm going to fulfill it to every extent of my ability. I was just blown away by that. And she does that with everything that she does. And then I learned she was a ballerina, and I went and watched her dance and was like, okay, I get it now. That's an incredible, talented person. What an amazing human being, and I'm so fortunate to have her in my life forever. It's just an amazing thing. What a lucky guy I am.
You're talking my language with regard to this topic. It comes down to this development of just pure respect and love that develops. You were blessed that you were able to meet her at a time, God's intervention, whatever it may be, and she inspired you, and she provided you with that inspiration, and where you are today is a testament to it, which is an incredible a credible thing, especially in today's day and world. But when you think about it, ballerina, some of the skill sets that she had, how she presented, and things like that created not only additional inspiration for you, but also I think complimented you and gave you this sense of I think pride because you wanted to make her proud of you. What ends up happening, and I think that's, with my relationship with my wife, when I think back, I try to dissect some of the things developing, especially when I compare it to prior relationships that were not good. With my wife, I never want to disappoint. I always want to, make her be proud of the decisions that I make and what I do, but recognizing, like you said, you have this vulnerability with her as well, where you don't feel that you have to hide things. And in the event that something goes wrong, you're there to share the good and the bad. And that transparency is key, I think, to the health of a relationship. So it's just something that I like to talk about on the podcast, and it comes up a lot with various entrepreneurs. Let me jump to a different topic that you also addressed with regard to your journey. You mentioned to this day you have a partner who was there for you as well, who kind of acted as a catalyst and has, traits, or let's just say different skill sets that you recognized in yourself that you didn't necessarily have, but you also recognize that you can't be everything to everyone. And you're going to need somebody like him to complement you so you both can thrive and pursue your journey, which tells me that you not only have humility, you have this understanding of, let's just say that you're not going to be you're not the smartest person in the room, and you recognize you're going to elevate by bringing in other people to help you move forward. So that's something else that ended up happening to you. And you probably, during the time period while you were actually going through it, you didn't even realize that these are the things that you may have been doing that got you to actually move forward. But that's what was occurring.
Yes. And what's interesting about that is, oftentimes we don't know how we get somewhere. We don't know how we've gotten to where we are. And if we're fortunate enough to take the time to slow down and reflect on how we got there, which is what I've been fortunate enough to be able to do the last couple of years, and it's actually helped me to propel myself forward, is to take a look at that journey and figure out what all those pieces look like and spend all of my time trying to perfect those pieces. Goals are wonderful. I love having goals. I love seeing other people achieve their goals. I go to the gym quite a bit. I'm on a powerlifting team, and I like seeing guys on my powerlifting team get PRs more than I enjoy getting my own PRs. Like watching someone's journey and watching them have a big lift, I get so pumped up for them. And so same thing with my staff in my restaurants. When they achieve a big goal, I love celebrating that with them. But I always try to impress upon them to not forget about the journey that got you there, because it's easy to get lost in that moment when you've achieved your goal. But in my mind, that goal, it's a commencement. It's the ending of one place and it's the beginning of the next journey. And don't get lost in understanding that that there's another journey coming up right upon the end of that goal. And trying to perfect that journey has been my main focus for the past couple of years. And what that has helped me do is develop some confidence. It's helped me to build better teams. It's helped me to be a more influential leader and understand how to better communicate with my staff to be a better leader to them. And one of the things that, to kind of go back to your question about how, partners have different skill sets that complement each other and that sort of thing. My partner and I are completely different styles of leaders. I'm more of a lead from behind kind of person. I like to make sure everyone has all the things they need, and I kind of lift them up and hoist them to where they need to be, and making sure that everyone is in their right place, has everything they need, and I can be their biggest fan from behind. Whereas my partner is a shoulder-to-shoulder leader, and he likes to be in the trenches with the staff. He likes to be there. He likes to work right alongside of them and be just right there, bussing tables or being, and so you have the owner of the restaurant literally going in and might be bussing a table. He might be running food. He might be cooking. He might be anywhere he needs to be at any given time. And so our staff gets to see two different styles of leadership happening at the same time. And that's, probably the primary place where we complement each other. I mean, I deal a lot more with the financial side of the business and kind of the operations as far as that goes, whereas Jonathan is more, he's a chef. He's a Johnson & Wales trained culinary expert and creates excellent food. But he also goes to the restaurant every single day and makes sure that, the air conditioning is working properly, that everything in the restaurant physically and mechanically is up to speed, and that the guests are getting the best experience they can. That the restaurant is in good working order. And, we just naturally fell into these roles. We didn't have to really discuss it. It was just something that was an organic movement. He was my boss originally. And it was interesting to kind of go from him being my higher up to matching up to his level and going to him and saying, "Hey, Jonathan, I've learned a lot from you. You've been an excellent leader, a great boss, but I really feel like your business could benefit from this, 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 and this." And a lot of it was like a financial thing. And Jonathan had successfully operated his own business for 15 years with a former business partner who was actually his ex-wife. But I just noticed some holes, and I was like, I don't want to go to him and say, "Hey, man, you're really messing this up." But I've got to find a graceful way to go to this guy and be like, "Hey, I think we can make up some ground here, and I think I know how to do that." And I eventually figured out how to approach him, and that's kind of how our partnership started. And he said, "I've always trusted you. I've always wanted you to be, someone in my organization that was, a decision maker, someone with good judgment. And, it's interesting that you bring these things to my attention because I know that I'm not good at those things. And I've been able to keep things afloat, even, being, to some degree absent on a lot of those things." And I was like, "Well, you know what? I'm going to spend some time learning how to do learning how these work. How does a P&L work? How do we compile this information? How do we, work on a budget? How do we schedule, labor towards a budget and do all these things? And moreover, what are your goals for those? Do we even have any goals for what those numbers need to be? And if we don't have those, let's sit down and figure out what works best for you as the business owner, because we all need to be working towards that objective of, the business owner getting what they need from the business."
So let me back up, because you covered some points with regard to your partnership, and we talk about this too as far as vetting a partner and making sure that whoever you decide to go in partnership with, you better know that person. You better watch that person, see how that person interacts when they think you're not looking at them. How do they treat, other people, things like that. So you really have to do such due diligence with regard to partnership to begin with, which it sounds to me that you did that unbeknownst to you in that hierarchy of him being your boss. And then eventually when it shifted, that you became partners, and you knew. So you have to respect him, right? You had to respect him to even to entertain that idea.
Yes. Well, like I said, he was, Jonathan was the first owner operator that I saw that was heavily engaged with the day-to-day operations of his restaurant. I had seen so many owners and, silent partners, investors be very hands-off, but still expect, just, outcomes at the end. And I always thought, well, maybe that works in some businesses, but in restaurants, that doesn't work. If you want to have a desired outcome and you truly do want it, you must go there and you must provide directives. You must provide structure. You've got to be there, be an influential leader, and develop the team that can get you to your goals and your financial objectives. And I noticed that Jonathan was doing that, but he didn't know what he wanted his goals to be. He knew, he clearly wants to make money. We're all in business to make money. We have to do that, or else we can't grow our business, employ people. We have to make money. But I noticed that Jonathan, had this ability to really motivate a staff and to build a team and to get people to go into battle with him. Because in a lot of ways, a restaurant shift can be a battle. You've got the front door, you've got the kitchen, you've got multiple fronts, and the team has to be ready for anything to happen on any of those fronts at any given time. And I watched Jonathan be there on all those fronts and be a general for his army. And I was inspired by that. And I knew I wanted to continue working for him. And the people that had worked for him had been there for 10 plus years. That was unheard of in the restaurant business, to have teams that do that. And even to this day, our restaurant, our first restaurant that we opened together, Corto Lima, it's a Pan-Latin concept. the management staff has been there since day one, and we've been open for 7.5 years. And they've all grown and excelled in their positions, but they see opportunities for growth within their jobs, and they're not seeking other employment, which again is kind of unheard of even in my experience in the restaurant business. I was always looking for the next thing.
We had the opportunity to bring on the podcast another hospitality owner, and David, his role similar to yours on your end, and his partner is in the kitchen. His partner is the same. It's the same mindset that he has, and he knew. And the partnership there seems to be a symbiotic relationship among partners in the hospitality field itself, in order for it to sustain. And included in that discussion, which you hit on, was longevity with the employees and the staff, and ensuring that there's opportunity for growth within the industry, within the restaurant itself, in order to maintain that stability. So that requires an art, so to speak, and a mindfulness as an operations owner to ensure that you are aware of your staff, you're treating them properly, and that a pride is developed, especially with the fact that you're dealing with, from a demographic standpoint, probably younger people in general who go into that. And it's hard work, period. I remember my wife shared with me, and I worked at a catering business for a while, and it's thankless hard work to begin with. But there is a sense of pride when somebody's really appreciative for the things that you do and you present different things. So I was remiss. I should have asked earlier about this restaurant that you first did together. So what's the name of the restaurant you did with Jonathan, the first one you did with him?
So the first restaurant was Jonathan at Gratz Park, and it was in a hotel. And Jonathan opened that restaurant actually in 1998. And I began working there in 2007 as a bartender while I was kind of going back and finishing up college. And, fine dining, Southern cuisine, and, very nice restaurant, high regard in town, always in the top 3 in, every publication, every accolade. And then in 2011, Jonathan was actually nominated for the James Beard Award for the Southeast for Best Chef. And he wrote a cookbook called Bluegrass Table, which I was fortunate to be included in his cookbook. I wrote a chapter on cocktails with Jonathan. And so we had a lot of fun. So that was kind of the first, not a restaurant shift, kind of thing that we did together. Was, he was writing his cookbook. I kind of helped him with some of the editing, and, he confided in me in a lot of the, trials and tribulations of writing a cookbook, and then asked me to participate in some of the cocktail recipes, which I was flattered and had a lot of fun doing that. But that was kind of the first different project that he and I did together. And it was, we found that it was easy to communicate. We found that it was something that was, we could organically move towards a goal, and we would just get there. And I don't want to say it was effortless, because we did work hard, but, we just communicated so well together. And now the way we communicate it's almost unspoken in the ways that we communicate with each other and get things done. And we've developed a really close partnership. When you get into a business partnership with someone, you're kind of married to them to some degree from a business standpoint, right? You're on paper, you're connected in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah,
and that's a different level of trust. And Jonathan and I entered into that. It was no problem. It was like, of course we're going to do this. There was no question. And
so is that
that's how I knew.
Is that Corto Lima? I mean, was that the first restaurant you did together after the Jonathan stint?
So Corto Lima was the first restaurant that he and I did as official business partners. Yes, and we established we established the business in 2016, but opened in February of 2017. And yeah, that was the actual first business. But we worked together starting in around 2007, and had that many years, almost 10 years to work together before we became official business partners. So we knew a lot about each other.
And then what came after Corto Lima?
So after Corto Lima, we were still working with a large real estate investment and hospitality company here in Lexington, and they asked us to help them to develop an Italian restaurant. And so Jonathan and I said, okay, cool, we can do that. We can be concept development guys. So we signed a contract as consultants, and we developed a restaurant called Italics that opened actually during the pandemic. We opened in October of 2020 with half capacity and masks, and all the things, all the trials and tribulations that came along with the pandemic. but we opened a business and hired and trained during that time.
Wow.
And, that was a big undertaking, because it was unexpected. We were ready to open the restaurant probably earlier in 2020, but then of course in March everything went into shutdown mode. So we were, working on how to keep Corto Lima alive. And unfortunately, the hardest day of my restaurant career was March 17th of 2020, when I had to let 52 people go because I didn't know if I could continue to provide a place of business for them. And, we scaled, we figured out what we could do to keep the business alive. Bree was paramount in helping us to do that. And so we figured out how to keep the restaurant going. We brought back a few staff members to do some takeout stuff, and basically turned our restaurant into Corto Lima, turned it into a drive-through. And, me and Jonathan and one other chef were in the kitchen cooking and bagging food, running it up and down our stairs to bring out to cars that would, we'd do pre-orders and things like that. All the while, we're still developing this new restaurant called Italics while this is going on, while the world is completely shut down and everyone's uncertain of the future. And, what's going to happen? We just didn't know. But we just kept working, and we kept moving forward, and we learned a lot about ourselves.
I bet you learned a lot about yourself. That resilience and that passion and desire to move forward. And obviously we all experienced COVID in different ways. My wife was shut down for as well. And we know the stories about the countless restaurants that got shut down because of that, ridiculous virus and everything that happened. And with the governments and the shutdowns, Florida, we're fortunate that we were able to, get back and up and running sooner than a lot of other places. But it's clear to me, and I bring this up, entrepreneurs are people who have just a different type of DNA. And, DNA, maybe DNA is the wrong word, because I don't necessarily know if you're born with this desire that we have to be independent, because sometimes it shows itself later on in life, right? It comes up a little later where you decide enough's enough. So it could be experience. It could always be there, and it just shows itself at different periods of time. But you had that resilience to do whatever you needed to do. And unfortunately, you had to make, as a leader, as a boss, you had to make those important decisions that were terrible, distasteful, but you have to do that with regard to letting go of staff. And then you have to, get your hands dirty and do other things associated with keeping your dream and your business alive or afloat. Maybe not necessarily things that you may want to do, but you do it. Dealing with the adversity associated with it, you move forward, you continue to move forward. And that's what you did. And I'm a firm believer in that. Those traits that you have allow you to become, it allows you with dealing with the problems and getting through the problems builds the strength to move forward successfully and continue on to be able to take on risk and take, move forward with the decision-making process in life as an entrepreneur, that if you don't experience those things, you don't necessarily have that moxie to do, or you don't have that confidence. Now you have that confidence that, hey, I've been through probably one of the worst things I've ever been through before. So I'm not only am I going to cherish what I have now, I'm going to safeguard it. But if something goes wrong, or so, we'll deal with it. However we have to deal with it. So it's just something I wanted to bring up, because it comes out a lot in different ways when I end up talking with people on the show. You don't even realize some of the things that you've done, but you do it because that's just you. It's just who you are. You don't quit. You don't ask the government for, hey, I need help. I'm dying here. I'm done. No, you do what you need to do.
Exactly.
So I know that what we're going to do, and we spoke about this a little bit offline, that we're going to talk about the life and times of you actually taking a concept that you put together with your partner and where you are with building out a new business that you're going to do. And hopefully this business is going to be open in the next couple of months, and we're going to do more podcasts. This was more or less a podcast where we introduce you to our followers and our listeners and viewers so that they can get a little bit of background on you. But let's go from, you have the other restaurant. Did you go right to this current project you're on now next, or did you have something in between?
Jonathan and I, my partner, we are always talking about what's next. That's one of the fun things about our partnership, is that we're, never satisfied, as they say, right? We love what we have built, but we know there has to be more. And because we still have desire inside of us, and that desire is, fulfillment being sought. And so we need to face that and move forward with it. And so we're always talking about what's next, what's next. So we have been moving around in Lexington, looking at spaces, looking at, what's going to fit for, any number of concepts that we've been talking about. The way that we look at it, making food and drinks is, we've been doing that for a really long time. We can sit down and we can formulate menus. We know what Lexingtonians like and enjoy. We can make them food and drinks. We just listen to them. We can make them good food and drinks. But having the right space to do our business and being in the right location and feeling the energy of the space is so important. And so we looked at, a half a dozen different locations for a new concept that we didn't exactly know what it was going to be. A lot of restaurateurs kind of have everything dialed in, and we're just going to put it here in this space, and they just start going. And where Jonathan and I are a little bit more whimsical in our development. And, we look for the energy of the space and where it is to kind of tell us what needs to happen there. And so we were very close to signing a lease on a space where we were going to do a particular concept with a really nice outdoor patio that we really enjoyed. We thought Lexington, would really love this concept, would embrace it. There's a void of this particular type of concept here, kind of leaning a little bit more tropical, Pan-Asian, that sort of thing, which we don't have right now. And so we were going through, lease negotiations to become a tenant. And I just kept looking at Jonathan, and he and I both would look at each other and just like, this just doesn't feel right. Something doesn't feel right here. And again, that unspoken communication thing that we have, we both just knew it. And so the last time we met with this landlord to discuss leases, Jonathan and I sat down for 30 minutes afterwards, and I just looked at him. I said, it's time to take the next step in our business. It's time for us to get into real estate. It's time for us to be owners of our property and take ownership and do this and move forward and look at a long-term look at the long-term possibilities of our business and what does that future look like to kind of create some generational income for our families. And, that in my mind is hard to come by without real estate ownership. And, that's a big undertaking for a restaurant to say, hey, it's already a tough business. Now let's get into a big mortgage payment, whereas a lease agreement is a little bit more of an asset. Honestly, you can, walk away from a lease agreement and maybe have some, penalties to pay or this and that. You can't walk away from a mortgage. You got to pay the bank. And that's the kind of pressure that I was ready to take on, the kind of risk that we were both ready to take on. And so lo and behold, a really fantastic property became available in downtown Lexington the day we decided to do this. I don't believe in serendipity, but sometimes I believe the universe kind of directs things in a certain way that if you're paying attention in the right ways, you get what you want. And we found this property. We went and looked at it that afternoon, made an offer that evening, and we're under contract the next morning.
Wow.
And we've recently closed on that property. About 3 weeks ago, we closed on the property. We've been working in it every single day to make it our own. It's a beautiful building downtown. It was built in 1920, and we are opening a bar and restaurant called 310. And it's named after the location. It's at 310 West Short Street. And so we have also created the Locations Restaurant Group out of that. Corto Lima is named after the cross streets where it is located at Short and Lime. So it's a loose translation in Latin or in Spanish to English. And so we have a commissary kitchen named after the street that it's on. So it just made sense that we are all about our location. And so the Locations Restaurant Group was founded, 310 was established, and we're hoping to be open with that business, sometime before the end of the year in October or November. And so more of a bar heavy concept, and but still the same idea of hospitality.
So that's incredible. I mean, so we're gonna try and get you. I know you're so busy, but we're gonna try and get you at different phases of that journey until we get to a point where you're actually functioning as a viable business. So where is it now, so that we have a point of reference as far as the position that you're at?
Sure. So business development wise, we have almost finished with the demolition of the interior and are ready to start going the other way with having contractors in for the interior fit up and design. And so right now is actually a really good time to go in and see the before shot, because it's almost a completely empty shell. And so as far as what the design of the restaurant goes, it's a really good time to check that out. Probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we will begin construction on the interior. I have been interviewing managerial candidates for the past 2 weeks, which has been an absolute joy meeting these people. We had for two management positions, we had 65 applications and resumes come in, and
Wow.
we narrowed it down to three. And to meet and interview these folks, and I've just had such a blast meeting with these people from all walks of life, from all different backgrounds, that just really desire to be a part of this project, and has been absolutely wonderful meeting with these people, and calling references, and hearing other industry folks talk about having managed these people or worked alongside of them. I've had a blast with this interview process, and unfortunately there can only be one or two at the finish line, but I can really tell that these candidates really want to be a part of this project. So that's kind of where we stand right now. We're putting contractors in line. We're speaking with distributors about opening up distribution lines for getting our products and that sort of thing. So all of those things have started. Meanwhile, I am actually writing the business plan as we develop the restaurant. So I'm working on the pro forma financials. I'm working on personnel plans. I'm working on all of the kind of the financial backbone of the restaurant that will give us a reference point when we start to build out budgets and determine what the financial health of the restaurant needs to be as we operate.
And then I think you're going to put, did you say that you're going to put something upstairs, or you're going to make it, it's going to be a hybrid?
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be something with regard to the setup?
So my wife and I founded Cox Consulting, a full service marketing firm, and we also do management consulting. We founded that business in February of 23, and we've been working out of our house since then. But we have determined that the second floor of our building would provide us a wonderful space with which to conduct business for our consulting firm. So hopefully by about September or so, we will be up and running with Cox Consulting at 312 West Short Street in downtown Lexington, which is something, if you told me this 2 years ago, even, maybe even a year ago, that this would be a possibility for our business, I would have been like, no, there's maybe that sounds pretty cool, but it's actually happening. And I found myself, as we were under contract and going through this daydreaming, of what's my office going to look like downtown? What are these things? Because, this little kid from Somerset, Kentucky, who thought he was going to be a bartender in a restaurant his entire life, or some kind of service position, is now buying a building downtown and opening a restaurant on the first floor and putting his consulting firm on the second floor. It just blows me away. I'm so blessed and so lucky.
And with a little boy, Chet.
There's Chet. Yeah, there's Chet is the newest addition to the family. He is he's 4.5 months old now, and is just the most wonderful thing that has ever happened to me and Bree. He just every day is. I start my day every day with a big smile that we share together. I look at him and he smiles back at me, and that's how I start my day every single day. And that's, you talk about motivation.
Oh yeah,
it's all for him. It's all for him.
Yeah, yeah. So there. I don't want to get in deep detail right now with regard to what it takes in order to move forward with a build out, with a building, buying the building, other than to state from my personal experience and both representing businesses and being involved in buying property, commercial property. It takes a team. It takes a lot of different people, and it takes, like you said about music and an orchestra and a conductor, it takes, you as the owner to really ensure that you have the right people in the right place to help you review contracts, make the right decision regarding finances, staffing, and things like that. But as far as your business plan and model, you've already got kind of proof of concept as far as your ability to be successful with these other restaurants. But what I've learned in speaking with restaurateurs or hospitality experts like yourself is that you all have an approach that seems to be, at least the successful ones, where each entity needs to stand on its own. In other words, you're not going to take, money or profits from one particular entity to put in the other entity and mitigate the exposure of the other entity. It's a very cautious analysis that I think takes place behind the scenes. Can you just talk a little bit about that for people who just go, people, my followers and viewers, we go into restaurants, we eat, we don't really think, we don't know that, wizard behind the scenes with regard to all the decisions that go on. And then we see restaurants pop up, 2, 3, 4, sometimes 10 restaurants across the state. But talk a little bit about what goes into the analysis from a business standpoint.
Sure. So, Corto Lima has its own business plan. It has its own P&Ls. It has,
and that's profit and loss for anybody who's
profit loss. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Yep. Hopefully more profit than loss, but that's that's what it is. So we at every meeting that we have, Jonathan and I with our management staff, everyone's curious about 310, the next project. They want to know what's going on there, and it's my job to make sure that we maintain focus on Corto Lima. Management staff there, general manager, he is responsible for managing the profit and loss statement, certain lines of the ledger there. And we must make sure that Corto Lima maintains its fortitude and that its financial health is as optimized as it possibly can be. And we wouldn't be taking on this next venture unless we knew that was the case. The last thing that we ever want to do is, take the success of Corto Lima from a financial standpoint and divert those funds over into, the next venture. 310 has to stand on its own. It has to have its own profit and loss. It has to have its own expenses. It has to be its own thing. It has to be its own identity. The restaurants will only be 100 yards from each other. They're very close. They are siblings in every possible way. A lot of the personnel management, the HR things, the handbook, the code of conduct, all of those things that we found success with. Now we can transfer a lot of that information to 310, but conceptually and financially, they are two completely separate entities and ideas. And I think a lot of people, look at restaurants as a magic box. And that's the idea. It should feel that way from the guest perspective. When you go drive down the street and you see another bank being built, it's like, well, of course they're building another bank. There's got to be some place to put all that money. It's like very obvious. But when you see a restaurant being built, it feels different. People look at that and it just kind of feels like someone had to work really hard to do that. Even when it's another McDonald's being built, it's like, well, somebody had to, a franchisee had to take a risk and go in. It's not the McDonald's corporate going in building another one. It's someone taking on some risk. And so you kind of, it has a different feel. It's like, there's risk involved. There's, especially in Lexington where we have 350,000 people, but about 785 restaurants. So wow. Competition is great here. But that's not what drives us. It's not the competition that drives us. It's the creative mindset that we must find ourselves existing in order to find success. Competition, in my mind, competition is only taking something from someone else that can only be yours for a certain period of time until it's someone else's. Whereas if you create something, it's yours forever until you decide to pass it on to the next person. And that's what our restaurants have to be. And that's why we've grown. We could have honestly, we could have grown a little bit more quickly. We could have had a second restaurant. We could open another Corto Lima, I believe. That restaurant has found such success here that I believe it would work in another part of town if we opened up a second or maybe even a third location. But that didn't feel like the right thing to do. We didn't want to take the magic away from Corto Lima's primary location. And again, that magic box component of what a restaurant actually is to a guest is a very important part of the entire process. And we knew the next thing had to be completely different. That's why, even italics existed. We were like, we've done Latin, now we've done Italian, and now we're going to do 310, which is definitely more of a world cuisine kind of restaurant where there are no rules. We're kind of constrained to the Latin world at Corto Lima. At Italics, it's very much an Italian restaurant with pastas and things you would find all over the peninsula of Italy. 310, you may have bao buns next to fried chicken, next to who knows what. It's a very whimsical idea because we're ready to kind of take the reins off of that idea of a singular concept and kind of be inspired by the food and drinks from all over the world and all of the different spirits and wine from all over the world and bring that to Lexington. And, will we do multiple 310s? I doubt it. I think it'll be the only one. And frankly, Corto Lima will probably be the only one as well. But it's not that we're not in a growth mindset. It's that we're in a manageable growth mindset that allows us to maybe grow within our business, but not over encumber ourselves with so many entities that we just have so many places to be at once, because it's just Jonathan and I. And it's not about having this giant restaurant empire. It's not about having, all these restaurants that make all this money or owning all this land that does. It's never felt about that. Those are just, if we get to do that, outstanding. But more than anything, we want to watch our staffs grow. We want to provide opportunities for our people. We want to watch them grow. And, maybe one day I tell all my staff that I hire them, I was like, I hope one day that you open your own restaurant. And I hope that something you learn here compels you or helps you to be able to do that, or whatever it is that you go to do. I hope that you learn something here that helps you and stays with you throughout your path and your journey throughout your life. And I hope that we get to, continue to be a part of that. And that's kind of what it's always been about.
That's so admirable and well said. I don't know if I'm lucky in that the people that I brought on the podcast seem to have a very similar view on that approach to the running their business, because I wouldn't think that that's the case across the board with people who own restaurants. I think that merit to your success is in part is how you guys approach things that way. Which is really admirable. All right. Well, I had you on a long time. I really appreciate it. We're going to bring you back because there's a lot more we want to cover. I know we've got some things scheduled as far as different dates through the life of this process. And we're so excited about this opportunity to share with our viewers and followers and on listeners about, this journey that you're going to go to open up this new restaurant. And so the next time we speak in a couple of weeks, and maybe we'll try and get some shots that we'll be able to put on the show too, or on some of our platforms of where the restaurant is now, and do some timelines for sure. But when we speak, say in 2 weeks, what is your expectation of where you may be in relation to where you are today with the restaurant?
So in 2 weeks, I hope to have hired my management staff and have begun training that staff. Or if they are in positions right now, they've given notice and that we're moving towards full-time employment with them. And in addition to that, I hope to have all of my pro forma financial, the appendix of the business plan, essentially, I hope to have that completed so we can have a really hard look at, what we're looking at from, milestones and expenses for the startup, and then cash flow statements to kind of see what this thing looks like month to month, which restaurants are in some ways kind of predictable when it comes to expenses. They're a little unpredictable when it comes to gross receipts. So that's the part that, where Jonathan and I come in, we got to bring the people in to spend the money. And then as far as the construction goes, I hope to really have, moved forward with some of the construction interior wise, getting the contractors. Like Jonathan and I are essentially we're the general contractors. We've decided not to outsource that. So we are currently looking for folks that can build out stuff for us, work in conjunction with our design team to make this beautiful restaurant come to life. And so in a couple of weeks, that's where I plan to be.
So you put the hat on as a general contractor as well. So you're wearing multiple hats. You both are
Correct.
wearing multiple hats. So just curious for me, for my edification, with regard to the staff and the training, will you actually bring on staff and start training them and paying them prior to the opening of the restaurant?
That's the idea. The beautiful thing about having an existing restaurant like Corto Lima is, again, those systems will be somewhat similar from, HR, how we operate together, how we work as a team. None of that will change. The design will change, the menus will change, but how we compose ourselves and how we deal with each other and how we work together as a team, none of that really changes. So I'll be able to bring on some staff and go ahead and get some training done with them at Corto Lima, bring them in as part of the family, and we all get to learn about each other and know about each other. And then when we progress a bit more in the space at 310, then we can, kind of hit the ground running and not be learning about each other in this brand new space when there's too much new going on. So it's wonderful we have that opportunity, and I want to take advantage of that. And so I'm hoping to have these folks hired by, September 1 or the middle of September, and go ahead and get them integrated into the team. And then service staff will come, a couple of weeks later. But my hope is that the management team can develop their own staff and hire their own staff. If I come in and hire a bunch of servers and bartenders and just I develop a rapport with them, and then I hand them over to a management staff that's also new, and they've got to figure out if they mesh or not. That's introducing too many variables into the equation, and I need to remove as many of those variables as possible. And so, by allowing this management team to hire and train their own staff, that, for one thing, brings in the accountability structure. They know exactly to whom they report, and they can make sure that they mesh from the get-go, and they put their own staff together with our directives, of course, and with our infrastructure and with all of our HR material. But it's for them to really put their team together.
Yeah, and it empowers them, and it creates also a sense of ownership and responsibility for them to not let you down. It's all part of the puzzle in
Yes.
leadership. It's great. So thank you so much. Really appreciate the time. I had a good time. See, it wasn't that bad. We went pretty quick, an hour and some odd, and it was painless, right?
No, this was absolutely wonderful. It's great to be able to tell this story and to share a lot of these successes, because they're not my successes. They're our team successes. They're my partnership successes. And it's really outstanding to get to share those, all those victories, and also some of the things that we didn't do so well. And it's, always got to talk about those too. So, but thanks for having me on to be able to share this.
Thanks for taking the time again. And remember, everybody, keep it pro to pro. That's all for today's episode of Pro to Pro. I hope you enjoyed hearing from our guest and gained some valuable insights into the world of entrepreneurship. Like and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest episodes, and don't forget to follow us on social media. Thanks for watching and listening, and remember to keep it pro to pro.